Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Many of us are just getting back from Taos, sort of getting back in the saddle from being in Taos. There were about 30 something of us last, I want to say weekend, but the retreat was sort of in the middle of the week, which has me completely upside down. But last week, at some point, several of us were in Taos, which I'll talk about a little bit, but it's nice to see you. The thing I want to talk about today is really how, in one way, practice is about becoming at ease. And that ease is never something we can force or strive for or make happen. But that as we get more and more comfortable just being here, whether here is Times Square, New York City, or here is the deep silence of a forest, or here is anywhere in between, here is you. And as you get more comfortable with that, somehow everything gets more comfortable. If you want a little koan, one for this week is from a Blue Cliff record, and a student asked Baizhang. It's one of the great old teachers. What's the most wonderful thing in the world? Slightly hyperbolic, but what's the most wonderful thing in the world? Another translation says, how does the incomparable power of Chan appear in the world? And Baizhang says, sitting alone on Great Courage Peak. Which has a little bit of a double meaning because it happens to also be the mountain where he's sitting. So sitting alone in Laguna Beach. Sitting alone in San Francisco. Sitting alone in Brooklyn. The incomparable powers of Chan appearing. Something that always strikes me when we have a retreat, but it's pretty much true of human gathering writ large, I think, is that when you first come in, there's all this anxiety about being with other people, that what they might think of you or what you might think of them, or can you be yourself, or I don't know, all the stuff that comes up being in a sphere of another person. Happens without them too, but it's just more noticeable, especially when they're in large numbers. But as the retreat goes on, with any luck, all that stuff starts to soften. And you get more comfortable with other people, and you get more comfortable with yourself, and you do things you might not expect, and you end up, I don't know, being cozy and feeling loved and feeling loving and whatever it is. And then the retreat is going to end, and you have to go through another whole process of either the immense sorrow of that and feeling you have to go back to your own life, or no, sometimes just the uncertainty of all that. It's a known place when people pick fights or have other things, which is part of why I mention this, is this seems to happen quite a lot around the holidays too. You have all the anxiety of coming together with people or not having people to come together with, and then you have all the anxiety of disembarking, whatever that is. And somehow the thing I started thinking about, I how much I love gathering with people and love gathering with my friends. And when I've been on a retreat, there's often this moment, because I pretty much always fly there, when I get in my plane seat and I'm just in my own room, in a sense. And there's always this kind of, oh, isn't that so nice to somehow, or like going to sleep at night, that I'm just with this person, or I'm just where this is, and that there's a, not always true, but there's a quiet and an intimacy to that kind of encounter that's a very different kind of intimacy than being with other beings. And I think somehow that comes with practice, both actually. That as some people are fine being with themselves, but going to encounter other beings is where the trouble seems to be. And some people seem to be fine with other beings, but keeping company with this person is where the trouble is. And I think as you move deeper, like that night, the Buddha mentioned this a little while ago, I think, but when he realizes that all the lives are in some way his lives, and all the kinds of feelings and material are somehow his, and that he doesn't have to hide himself from himself in terms of what might be in his own heart, but also he doesn't have to try to monkey with everybody else's experiences because he can't tolerate it. It's just an ease. And don't really mean ease in the sense that just everything's peaceful and hunky-dory. I mean, I like the second part of this koan where the student seems to say, "Oh yes, okay, this is what it is," and Baizhang hits him. He bows, and Baizhang. That there's also an ease sometimes in, don't know, uh, cutting people's head off in the Zen tradition. That there's an ease in being firm or fierce, because it's not coming from a personal agenda. It's just what the moment asks for. And that's a nice thing. And on this last retreat, we sometimes do these stories. A lot of people know about this. And one person, a lot of things really struck me. Some people really went for it this time, which is always fun. If you have a real Zeus or a real Aphrodite in the house, can tell it changes. It really changes the space. We had one one person who really went for Aphrodite's rage at her son for marrying, and we had one person who really went for Zeus scolding Cupid and was polishing the lightning bolt, getting, you can just feel the way the images start to come to life. But one person, we did the story Psyche and Eros. If you don't know it, I highly recommend reading it in the Golden Ass. But she was Aphrodite's rage. And she said this great thing during her turn, because what we do with people is, you become that image, and then we ask you, well, what is that for you? What do you think that is for you, if this is your dream? And she said she at first she was kind of disturbed by Aphrodite's rage and where that might be coming from in her life. And then she said, then it dawned on me that the call might be coming from inside the house. And I loved that phrase, because I think that's such the thing we're looking at in this practice, is that no matter what I meet in the outside world, the thing we actually have the most trouble with is when the call that's coming inside the house. Meaning, if I can stand my judgment of me, your judgment of me isn't going to get to me in the same way. Or if I can somehow hold myself in enough, I don't know, can respect my own dignity, it doesn't feel at stake in the same way in the world. And so much of what's happening when we're sitting is we're not really striving for peace. We're seeing, who is this that's causing me so much trouble? And meditation is definitely a place you encounter all the ones causing you so much trouble. But another place you can know, I was really noticing it. Allison and I both, I don't know, had demons, demons in our bodies during the retreat. We both got some kind of, Allison was much worse than I am, some kind of stomach trouble. And for me, between that and the altitude, I really didn't sleep a lot. And so I was lying awake at night and not feeling so great. And it's such an interesting time to really be with oneself because you can't, just like a deep meditation, you can't get away. You can't do anything and you're tired and you're whatever you are. And to really say, oh, can I be with this person? And there are lots of ways of doing that, but I came across, I have a few things I want to read to you today. But one is the poet Billy Collins, who you can tell somehow really enjoys the mischief of his own mind. He has a lot of fun seeing, well, what is it that appears when there's so much trouble? And there's a poem called Insomnia that I think is, well, you'll see. Even though the house is deeply silent and the room with no moon is perfectly dark, even though the body is a sack of exhaustion inert on the bed, someone inside me will not get off his tricycle, will not stop tracing the same tight circle on the same green threadbare carpet. It makes no difference whether I lie staring at the ceiling or pace the living room floor. He keeps on making his furious rounds, little peddler in his frenzy, my own worst enemy, my oldest friend. What is there to do but close my eyes and watch him circling the night, schoolboy in an ill-fitting jacket, leaning forward, his cap on backwards, wringing the handlebars, maintaining a certain speed. Does anything exist at this hour in this nest of dark rooms but the spectacle of him, and the hope that before dawn I can lift out some curious detail that will carry me off to sleep? The watch that encircles his pale wrist, the expandable band, the tiny hands that keep pointing this way and that. And so this is one way of dealing with this situation, is you realize actually it's not just one person. There's a whole host of, James Hillman used to call it the blood soul. There's a whole host of figures and people and phenomena in here that we come to know in practice. And you can see how the more related you become to your inner life, the less you're fighting with it actually. Can become a source of surprise or delight, or even the consternation. It's alive with something. It's not something to do away with. And this is one of the things in Zen too. It has such a. It's true that we want to see through the activity of the self because there's such certainty in it. But it's also true that you need an eye to take you around in the world. You need a passport and a driver's license and a something by which you are somehow this person. And that the suffering doesn't come by the nature of this person existing, it comes by believing it. That's what causes the trouble, that you think this is a solid, defensible um, no, something you have to take quite so seriously. And I want to read you. Many of you probably know, but when Carl Jung made his Red Book over many, many, many years, which was his, in a way, an activity of deep, deep solitude for him, because it was his way into all the figures and phenomena that live in him. And they weren't just his. He could tell the more he contacted them in himself, the more they were actually elements of the world that was living around him. You can see that now, right? Like it's amazing how many people come to see me that have dreams of Donald Trump or dreams of, climate change or dreams of, and you say, oh, these aren't just outside forces. These are actually things I'm coming to know and negotiate with in here. And so, anyway, he went on this many-year journey where he would just write and he could see into his inner life and the forces there. And the more he attended to them, it's like we do, they would begin to transform. The more he listened to them, the more he saw through them, the more he um, addressed the things that he was ignoring and came to look at the things that he really didn't want to see about himself. They would change. And there's this moment very, very late in the book, actually. He starts to encounter this figure he calls my I, just I. And if you go in the paintings, you actually see his eye is this little tiny figure that's having to negotiate all these big forces, and he draws him in. But he comes to his eye. And of course, the Zen question is, well, who comes to his eye? But we won't worry about that. He says, I came to myself, a giddy and pitiful figure, my eye. I didn't want this fellow as my companion. I found myself with him. I prefer a bad woman or a wayward hound, but one's own eye. This horrifies me. And he determines that because his eye hasn't sufficiently lived and evolved enough through human history, that he says, the barbarian requires barbaric means of education. My eye, you are a barbarian. I want to live with you. Therefore, I will carry you through an utterly medieval hell until you are capable of making living with you bearable. You should be a vessel in a womb of life, and therefore I shall purify you. The touchstone is being alone with oneself. This is the way. And I'm not going to read you the whole section, but what this starts with, his education of his eye, is he says, I resist, I cannot accept this hollow nothing that I am. What am I? What is my I? I always presuppose my I. Now it stands before me, I before my I. I speak to you now, my I. And what he basically does is sort of begin to see through the nature, all the things. He says, one could despair over your sensitivity and desirousness, which exceed any reasonable measure. And I should live with you of all people. I regret I must speak such truths to you. Yes, you are laughably sensitive, self-righteous, unruly, mistrustful, pessimistic, cowardly, dishonest with yourself, venomous, vengeful. One can hardly speak about your childish pride, your craving for power, your desire for esteem, your laughable ambition, your thirst for fame, without feeling sick. So he goes on um, pretty much about how, the eye thinks that it's being loving when actually it's being self-serving. It thinks it's being, he goes on. And you might think this is sort of harsh, but he says this interesting thing after this rant After I had spoken these and many more angry words to my eye, I noticed that I began to bear being alone with myself. But the touchiness still stirred in me frequently, and I had to lash my eye just as often. And I did this until even the pleasure in self-torment faded. And this is such an element of practice. In a way, it's a different kind of condemnation than one's habitual, you know, habits of judgment toward oneself. You can see he's actually seeing clearly. He's not just condemning out of habit. And this happens in practice, and it's a hard stretch to bear because you see, oh man, I thought I was such a loving person, or I thought I didn't think I was so bad, but look at me, I'm manipulating, I'm hiding, um, I'm self-serving, I'm all these things. And then you begin to see underneath that, which is, oh, I'm actually afraid all the time that no one will love me. Or I'm so worried about missing out on something, or you just keep going down, right? And not trying to somehow make someone make it better for you, not trying to convince yourself otherwise, not trying to, talk yourself out of it, not trying to find a good friend that says, nah, you're doing all right, whatever it is. Usually it helps to have a guide and a practice. But it's true that the self-torment somehow wears out after a while. You just, who's even doing this? What is this? Is this even true? And I was thinking a lot about many years ago. I was coming to one of these places maybe, and it was right before the holidays. And somehow I knew, my life was just I was wearing my eye out, I guess is one way of saying it. I had 3 rather bad relationships, and they were bad in kind of all the same way that ended. They all were a particular version of myself that I could tell, I think I'm done being this person, but I'm not sure who else, I don't know what else. And I was having kind of a significant birthday, and I was getting ready to move, and I just knew something needed to change in my life. But I didn't really know how or what or who, or just that it was whatever self I had been was worn out. And I decided all that holiday row, the right thing felt to be by myself for all those holidays. And for the end ones in particular, I was alone in my apartment, which was being packed up to move. And it wasn't like I didn't have, people were very worried about me. You should spend the holidays with someone, you should come over, you could. But there was some kind of pain in knowing that the person I was going to show up to those gatherings didn't feel true anymore. And there was more pain in sort of propping up that person than in just being alone in my apartment. And the thing that started to become evident in that time that then stretched for many months after that was there was so much inside I had avoided in some way or tried to jump over. Grief and uncertainty and, no, desperation for something, desperation for some kind of love, um, fear of some kind of closeness, all this stuff. And over those many months, I couldn't really be with anyone, or it didn't quite feel true. And even people I loved very much, because somehow I knew I had to attend to this person and no one else could. And it was interesting to a few of us were talking about this at the retreat, how no matter what, at some point you have to get all the way to the bottom of all the things you've been avoiding, all the I that you've been propping up. And it's not easy, but that at that bottom is this sort of gateway out into a world in which I'm not grabbing and projecting and pretending and hiding all the time. And in the Zen sense, that's where freedom begins. And you can tell how in the Buddha story, there's that great moment at the beginning um, when he's just a little boy. And in some way, there's all this certainty about who he is and who he's going to be and what's required of him. And he's out under the rose apple tree and he's just sitting and everyone forgets about him. And he forgets about him too. He forgets about being anyone and the world opens. And he catches a glimpse of something he wants to come back to. But then all the things start, all the roles and responsibilities and, I don't know, confinements start piling in on him again. And he has to make a series of departures. He leaves his wife and his son and his life, and then he leaves his best friend. And then he leaves the teacher and the ascetics. And then, he just has to keep emptying himself in a way till he finally reaches the end of his striving. And when he finally reaches that and very dramatically passes out, he has nothing more to strive for. Suddenly the world starts coming back to him, but he takes it in such a different way. There isn't any ambivalence, I guess is one way to say it. And you see this too in the ox herding pictures. You go chasing something and finally by the end, you come back to the marketplace, but your hands are empty. You're just there. Don't have anything to get or get away from. You're just there. And I think that's the sitting alone on great courage peak. Don't have anything to get or get away from. You're just here. We'll sit a little bit. And I guess just to say that whatever you think you have to get or get away from, that's the thing worth keeping company with. Don't have to do anything about that either. You can just see, well, who wants that? Or who's afraid of that? And just like Jung, you start to see, oh, someone thinks it needs that. That someone else can just be curious about that and be here. Just a couple more things I want to say, and I want to hear from my friends. A couple weeks ago, I got to where my partner's going to art school. They had open studios, which means everybody has a little white box that is their working space, and they got them all ready for people to come see with their art, right? And in one way, what was so interesting about it was it's not unlike doing dokusan at a retreat, in the sense that somebody brings you their decorated, studio, and you get to see the nature of their psyche in whatever way. And there are whatever 75 students, and everyone's art is wildly, radically different. And you can see the project would never be for someone to try to make their art like someone else's. And yet the project so often is for us to try to think, oh, it should be more, that person uses blue. Maybe I should use blue. It looks so nice for. And walking around, I mean, part of why I like hanging out with Alison Atwill is, she can look at art through that deep psyche lens and see exactly the nature of the consciousness of what they're doing. But you can see just looking at someone's studio, like there was one young guy, and just to look at him, he looks like he's from another planet. He really does. And I mean, in the best possible sense, he looks like he arrived from some other terrain. And you look around his studio and you think, yes, this is exactly what outer space art would look like from his planet. And other people, they have a black wall and one levitating box. And you look at them and you think, yes. But what you're sort of feeling is, how is whoever this person is and whatever the vehicle, whoever we are, whatever the vehicle, are we somehow expressing our true nature? And it isn't some ready-made, thing to be striving for. And in Zen, no, with any luck on the path, you don't become some ideal thing. You become more and more, if you're from outer space, you really look like you're from outer space. You're not trying to pretend you're not, or you're not angry about being from outer space, or that you somehow come to inhabit without all the disturbance of that I. You come to inhabit whatever creature you are. And that creature is an opening to the vastness, that the I is interfering with that opening to the vastness. And as it starts to be subdued through Jung's version of medieval tortures, which we would call, zazen, comes to be held still and worked through of all its objections and projections, and all that window just appears. And it gets clearer and clearer what it is, because it's not trying to be something else or apologize for being something or hide something, or, you're sitting alone on Great Courage Peak, whatever that is, wherever that is for you. So, I don't know, Alison Atwill, you have anything you'd like to say?
I do. I really love the quote from Jung about the touchstone is being alone with oneself. And the courage, I guess, sitting alone on Great Courage Peak. When we were doing the process of taking a place in the story of Psyche, there was it can be threatening to enter into fully without any reservations your place. And there was one person who, before they entered into the spot that they had found in the story, they told everyone in the retreat, I just want to make it clear that I'm not speaking, this is not my voice I'm speaking in. So already there's a wall in the mind, and so much of the practice is the more I'm at ease in with all of those disturbing and embarrassing and shameful and all those places in my own self that I disapprove of or find hard to tolerate, the more I'm at ease in here, I'm at ease in the world. It's a simultaneous sense of freedom of inner and outer as we walk in the world. And on our way back from the retreat, I was traveling with John and Michelle, and Michelle had called up an Uber ride to get us to the airport in Albuquerque, and there were three of us, and there were three very big suitcases. And she had asked for a very large vehicle. So always on travel days, there's this kind of heightened tension. And are you going to make your flight? And things are always going wrong. And so they showed up, and it was a tiny little Toyota Corolla, really beaten up. The car looked like, I don't know if this is going to even make it to the airport, let alone can we all fit in it. And it was a young man who didn't speak a word of English. And fortunately, Michelle spoke pretty good Spanish, and she talked to him about, he tried getting our luggage into the trunk and had to take things out and put them back. And finally, our luggage and us squeezed into the car. We take off, and inside the car, it has that terrible acrid chemical smell of air freshener, which always like makes me terrifically car sick. And the seats were torn, and he was playing the whole album of the Bee Gees for for the trip. And I was looking out the window and looking around the car, and I just couldn't have been happier. I just felt so, I don't know, there was nothing in my own psyche that was objecting to any little particle of our situation. And then when we got to San Francisco, within moments, our Uber driver showed up in this gleaming, brand new, big vehicle, pure white, snow white, and takes us inside this luxury. I was like being in a palace, and it turns out he was from Afghanistan, and a very sorrowful story, and beautifully thoughtful, intelligent face. And again, there was just nothing. I was sitting alone on Great Courage Peak. It was just really lovely. So that's it.
Thanks. Michelle, you want to say anything?
It was nice reliving that for a minute. I think this is what I want to say. A couple short things. I think this is a wonderful topic. I think sometimes, though, it's easy, we come to think we're going to finish this process. Like someday I will see through everything, and everything will be perfect, and I won't have to examine this eye. But I think that actually, even when you're blessed with seeing through completely at some point, this thing we think of as the I, if we are blessed to keep living this life, something about it comes back. And this is not a problem in my mind. And I think it's a blessing to have a practice. And I think that's what can grow over time, is rather than when, oh, look, that thing I want to get away from, or that way that I do that thing that I don't approve of, here it is again. I have an opportunity to look at it again, and we can start to welcome that more and more. And to me, that's one aspect of having a practice. It's becoming more and more free, not making ourselves more perfect. So I don't know. That's what came to me.
Yeah, it's not easy being an I. If you look at Jung's paintings, the eye's like this big and everything else is like this big. You think, oh, no wonder it's so nervous all the time. No wonder it's having to establish itself and reify itself. It's like this big. Um, John Tarrant, you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I actually love being alone at Great Courage Peak. Or winter is very much the time of solitude, I think, for me. And I think I remember when I was, I don't know, at first at university, I used to stay home from the pub on Saturday night sometimes and just hang around and um, do nothing very much. And I remember realizing how much more full I felt when I did that, or how much more here I felt. I wasn't really meditating, but later on I would go out into the. I just knew there was something I needed to do that I couldn't get from asking other people for it. And I suppose that's meditation, isn't it? That the universe will give you something if you stop trying to grab it and you stop begging and pleading and whining about it. So I don't know. It's a rather. It's not a koan I've thought much about. Daiyu Peak, and also sometimes I can probably spend too much time alone. But it's a lovely thing, and when it's just right. And I get insomnia, and I'm just get up in the middle of the night and I sit looking at the moonlight. And when we came home the other night, we walked outside, and Alison called me out, and there were two big owls on the barn roof, like sitting right next to each other, and like friends. They're obviously a couple, And I think the girls are a lot bigger. One of them was bigger than the other, but they're sitting there as if to welcome us, and they go woo woo woo, and you see them puff up and everything, and it just felt so nice to be alone with the owls. So, and yeah, I think, and the sense of resonance that happens, where this is what I came, this is what I was born for, this is what I came to this place for. It comes for me more when I'm in meditation or with the owls. That's it, I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I heard, Hermann Hesse had a great thing about where you meet the magic stone of your destiny is always in solitude, that it's something that comes for you. Solitude comes for you. But I think it's true that as you get easy with either direction, if you're alone, it's all right. If you're with others, all right. It's that there isn't, and that if you need company, company will come find you, or you'll stumble into it. Or if you don't, then suddenly you won't find anyone. And I think the narratives around all that start to relax. See that happen a lot. You don't think, oh, no one thought of me you just think, oh, I guess no one thought of me today. I'm thankfully, then I don't have to take any calls, it's that it's in accord. Did he go? John Joseph. I wonder if you have anything you'd like to say.
When you brought up the koan sitting alone at Great Courage Peak, it made me think of when I was a young adult and I had a cohort of Zen friends, and the only thing we wanted to do was move up to Alaska or to British Columbia and live alone in the woods, build a log cabin and live alone in the woods. And we did that. And it was beautiful out there, sitting alone at a place called Sheep Mountain, which was this almost half dome like cliff with actual doll sheep, in the snow, and it was really beautiful. But I realized after about a month or two that whatever stuff that we had in the city. All those walls, the mind, we somehow transported them out into the woods, and that just being in the woods itself was not enough. So it was kind of like Michelle's, needing to again and again, investigate the self. So after 4 to 6 months, I realized I didn't want to be alone, and I moved back into the city. Thank you.
That's great. And I think that's part of why Baizhang hits him. Oh, it's getting out into Alaska. Um, thanks, John.